Welcome to Doing Life Deliberately. My name is Trisha, and in this series on questions on homeschool curriculum, I tell you where and how to find the best homeschool curriculum, tell you where to find your state's homeschool laws, and give you curriculum reviews. Today's video is all about, do I need to be a professional teacher to teach my kids homeschool? If you're new to Doing Life Deliberately, please hit the subscribe button below to be alerted every time we post a new video. And if you like what you see here today, please give us a thumbs up and share us with your friends. Okay, so one of the big questions that parents have when they're just getting started with homeschooling is, do I need to be a professional teacher in order to teach my kids at homeschool? A lot of people out there in the world think that you should be, but the short answer to this question is no. However, what I would like to do is take you to a website called hslda.org, and I'll post this in the description box below. But HSLDA is short for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And this is a great group that advocates for homeschooling families and defends them in different court cases as needed. But they have a wonderful section on their website that will show you what the state homeschool laws are by state. And there are requirements in a few states for parents to be able to teach their children. And so what you'll want to do is consult that first, just to make sure that there aren't any requirements or restrictions for parents to be able to homeschool their children. Some possible examples of these restrictions or requirements could be whether or not you have a criminal history, and it can also be what your educational background is. It's really only a few states that have these restrictions or requirements, but you do want to check that first. So before you make hard and fast plans to homeschool your children, make sure that you visit this website and look and see what are my state's requirements for being able to teach my kids homeschool. So this is the HSLDA website, and I love this website because there's so many wonderful tools in here for homeschooling families. But one of the most helpful parts is they have this section right here that says homeschool laws in your state. So we're going to click here, and one of the pieces of information they will give is if there are any requirements for parents who are desiring to homeschool. So I'm actually going to go straight to Ohio because I know this is one state that does have requirements for parents. And if you go in here, so here's the Ohio information, but we're going to scroll down just a little bit, and it says, make sure you have the required qualifications. Parents who teach their own children at home are required to have a high school diploma or GED. So this is an example of one state, and they are few and far between, but you need to investigate this before you even go down the path of homeschooling to make sure that you are in a position to even do so. Beyond that, there are some things that I would recommend for you to keep in mind as you start out on this journey of homeschooling. I don't believe that homeschooling is for everyone. It really is a huge commitment. It's not easy. I do believe in homeschooling, and I feel like it was certainly the best choice for our family, but there are just different circumstances that make it not the best choice for everyone, and you really have to take some time to kind of count the costs and decide whether or not it's the best thing for your family. But those things aside, I'd like to give you some different things to think about before you take the leap and jump into homeschooling. The first thing I would say to you about homeschooling is that in order for it to go well for you, mom or dad or both, is that you really need to be enthusiastic about learning. If you have a bad attitude about homeschooling or a bad attitude about doing school on any given day, that certainly rubs off on your kids. But if you enjoy learning, then the chances are your kids are going to catch that and they will enjoy learning too. I know that was true for me growing up, and I was not a homeschooler, but my mom definitely had a love for learning. She was a teacher, and she really passed that on to us. She loved to read, she loved to write, and she definitely loved to learn. And so I would just commend that to you, Mom and Dad. Just think about, what is your attitude toward learning? Do you enjoy learning? Do you enjoy researching things? Do you find yourself reading books and looking things up on YouTube to learn and acquire a new skill? Do you enjoy going to museums and field trips? And are you enthusiastic about it? Because chances are, if you are, your kids will be too. Secondly, do you have a desire to really pour into your kids on a daily basis? You're going to be spending all your time with your kids. And so it's really important that you have a personal conviction about pouring into them, to developing their character, to helping them learn, to helping them excel, to helping them discover who the Lord has made them to be and the gifts that He's given them. And so if that's your passion, if you just really enjoy being with your kids, if you really want to pour your life into them, then homeschooling is definitely for you. Number 3 is a big one. Mom and Dad, do you have a willingness and a desire to grow in your own character? Because homeschooling is going to put you to the test. Your patience will be challenged. Your motivations will be challenged. Your skill sets will be challenged. You will be challenged in so many different ways because your little people are going to put you to the test. They are going to be used by God to refine your character. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. You know, God's given children parents so that parents can protect them and provide for them, to help shape and mold them into the people that they will grow up to be. But you know what? God's given us our kids to help mold and shape our own personal characters. And I know that my kids refine me every single day. And some days are just flat out hard. So if you are not willing to subject yourself to that refining process, you may not want to consider homeschooling seriously because it's hard. They are going to test you, and you will be challenged, and you will be changed, and you have a choice to make on a daily basis. Will I let God teach me through these little tiny people? Or am I going to reject that? Will it be a battle every single day? Because just like our kids choose their attitudes about their schoolwork and their chores and their responsibilities, so will our attitudes be challenged every single day. So if you are up for that challenge and you are willing to be refined and shaped and molded through your kids, because God's going to use them, He's going to use them even more if they are home all the time with you for homeschool, then homeschooling is definitely for you. Here's another big one. Are you willing to be flexible? Because homeschool calls for flexibility. You're going to have sick kids sometimes. You're going to have things that come up in life. And whether you are an unschooling parent that just kind of wants to go with the flow, or whether you are a hyper-scheduled parent that everything rigidly has its time, or somewhere in between, things are going to come your way and life is going to be disrupted. So homeschooling calls for flexibility. And you have to ask yourself, am I willing to be able to be flexible, and when life calls for it, pick up and go or drop what we're doing? There are just days that call for that. So that's something that you need to consider when you go into homeschooling. Are you willing to be flexible? Another challenge of homeschooling is taking care of your home. There's no breaks during the day from use of your home. So your kids constantly go from one place to another, and it's very easy for the house to just be a disaster. So speaking for myself, this is definitely a challenge for me. I feel like between taking care of kids and cooking and cleaning, and then you add homeschool on that, that's a lot of balls to keep juggling. And pretty much something is going to get dropped. And oftentimes for homeschool families, it's the cleanliness of the home. And you have to ask yourself, am I okay with that? Or is it so important to me that my house be pristine that this just isn't going to work because it's going to be a constant frustration? So, different families function different ways, and different families are able to really keep the house up. But I know for myself, and I know for a lot of homeschooling families, that is the ball that tends to get dropped the most. And so I've had to ask myself, am I willing to let this go? Is it so important that I just can't manage this, that we've got to not do homeschooling? Or am I willing to let that go because homeschooling is just that important to us? So that's something to consider. Another huge thing to consider when homeschooling is, do you have support? In a lot of homes, a husband and wife will be divided on this. One of the spouses will feel really strongly and the other will either be opposed to it or indifferent to it. But that's very different from having a spouse who is very supportive of it and saying, let's do this together, let's divide responsibilities, let's talk about what our kids' strengths and weaknesses are and how we can meet those needs through homeschool. So it's really important to have a support system when you're doing homeschooling. And so if you do not have the support of your spouse, but they're okay with you doing homeschool, make sure that you have a support system in place elsewhere. Do you have local co-ops that you can participate in? Is there a small group of homeschool moms that you can join up with, that you can be praying for each other and kind of sharing, your burdens and your joys? Just someone that you can bounce ideas off of and just have that support. Are there homeschool conferences in your state that you can go to that will help you in different areas of difficulty, that will, again, provide biblical training for homeschooling, that will give you ideas of how to maintain and flourish in your home when you're trying to homeschool on the side? So there's a lot of different things to consider, but you need to have a support system. In order for homeschool to succeed, you really have to have a support system. So consider, where can I find that support, especially if you do not have a unified home about homeschooling. And last, but certainly not least, have you really taken time to pray about homeschooling? Do you feel convicted by the Lord that homeschooling is something that you should do? One of the main reasons that we chose to homeschool was because of our personal conviction that this was how God wanted us to shape and mold our kids. Deuteronomy 6, that chapter talks a lot about raising your kids up and talking to them day and night, walking by the way, when you're lying down, when you rise up, teaching your kids to love the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so my conviction from that passage was just that teaching our kids to love the Lord is everyday life. It's not a Sunday morning thing. It's not a Wednesday night thing. It's not a just when we pray before meals thing. It's all of life. And one of the most profound ways that I think that we can do that is by seizing the opportunity with schooling to point them to God in everything that they learn. That's what homeschooling should be about. It's taking science and showing them the intricacies and the intelligence of our Lord, that molecules and atoms all work together to make different organs that function differently, and plants and animals and rocks and water and just all these things with life, space, that they are made by an intelligent creator and that they all point to the Lord, and that through art and music we see God's beauty and creativity, that through writing we can see the logic and the intelligence of our God, that through math we can see his precision and his orderliness. So all these different things that they are going to be learning, whether we send them to school or whether we keep them home, have the opportunity to teach them about God. But only in our home are they really going to hear those things. So we just felt convicted that that was what God was calling us to do, to seize that opportunity in those hours of the day to be able to point them to him. And so I would just commend to you, really pray about homeschooling. Really ask God, is this what you're calling us to do? And if he convicts your heart to do it, then pursue it with all your heart and mind and soul and strength. And I really feel like for whatever season, whether it's for all of their education or whether it's for a short time, that God will bless that as you surrender yourselves to him and submit your family to him in that regard. So pray about whether or not homeschooling is what God is calling you to do. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really hope that today's video was a blessing to you. Let me know how I can support you in your homeschooling journey. If you have questions or comments, please share them in the comment section below. I would love to get back to you. I would love to hear your heart. I would love to hear the joys of homeschooling that you're experiencing. So please share those in the comments section below. Until next time, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to connecting with you again soon. Bye.